Welcome back from that break, and of course, the discussion is still, we are still talking about matters disability inclusion. Is Kenya's inclusion right now, has it improved, or we still have much to do? And of course, I'm still joined by Nkaziri Idi, who is a lawyer, an advocate for, champion for person with disability as well. He is a member of CORA, that is Children of Deaf Adults. So before we went for that break, we promised that we are going to ask her to tell us a bit about maybe how has she been able to fight injustices on matters of disability. We have people out there who have been discriminated. How has she been able to handle that as a lawyer as well? So welcome back.
Thank you.
Now maybe let's go ahead now, maybe tell us now more about that particular question.
Okay. Initially, I had told you I do advocacy in two ways. The social justice perspective, whereby we may handle some cases, we give legal advice, but not proceeding the matter to court. And issues that actually need litigation, I work with a friend of mine who has a law firm called Mukuria, located in Westlands. So this is where, in case issues that need to go further, we take issues and the matter to court. Yes.
So maybe where can people find you, and how can people be able to find justice? We have people who have this particular problem, but they don't know what to do because they have no source.
Okay. It first of all starts with your awareness and to know maybe the problem that you have, does it have like the threshold for legal standing? Because at times someone can approach you and just tell you like, this person has been doing this to me, maybe discriminating me because I have a disability, and you don't just rush such a matter to court, because we have to also listen to the particulars of the case, how authentic, and if the person is willing actually to proceed to court. Because there are times we've really seen issues whereby maybe a child has got been sexually assaulted, maybe by a relative or someone, and when you proceed on the matter to record to the police, the people actually come out later and tell you they're not willing to proceed, and you cannot even force or coerce a person to go to court. Yes, so at times we are disabled by that. So I think it is awareness to the community and even to the parents as well, because we see most of these sexual violence cases, they really occur from families and people that the children themselves can identify. So it is up to the parents as well and guardians. When we actually come out to bring this matter, you are supposed to be at the forefront to fight for the justice of your own child. But if you are the one actually derailing it, because without a statement from you, without being ready to record a statement, appearing in court, the matter actually doesn't go further. Or even they even collude with the perpetrator. Yes.
Right. And now, how do we kill the notion that a person with disability need help totally? Because we have people, okay, yes, we have seen persons with disability across the streets begging and maybe seeking mercy from people. Mm-hmm. How do we kill the notion from now, the members of the public, maybe people who are not, they don't have a disability? Mm-hmm. How do we kill that particular notion that persons with disability need help?
Okay, a very simple one. It starts with education. Mm-hmm. I say when you educate a child, you've actually done a lot to the society. And when you see this child is educated, they know how to stand for their rights, they will know how to look. But if you leave this child who has a disability, remember that time she's a child, but as years go by, this child transforms to an adult. And an adult without an education, without being informed, and maybe the parents realize, my son is already 20, I can't keep on feeding him, I have other kids, what do? They send them away and they get begging. So I tell the society, first of all, start by educating your child. If you have a neighbor, a friend of yours, they got a child and you no longer see that baby, be inquisitive. Ask, let us be proactive, and let us support these kids to go to school. And maybe, unfortunately for the person maybe who did not get a chance to go to school, but they are out there, introduce them to other economic ways of making an income and employ them. They may come to you and you don't want to give them work. What will happen? They'll resort to begging. So it is we as the society. It's not only a matter of putting a blame to persons with disability and assuming they are retarded, they can't do anything. Yes.
All right. So it's about knowledge. We still have a knowledge gap.
Yes.
Can you compare maybe now the situation here, maybe in urban areas, compared to rural areas? Because I've seen in rural areas, people are hiding. But in urban, at least, people are a bit civilized. Maybe you can compare.
Okay. Let me just put a very simple comparison.
Because when you look at in the urban areas, people who have been handled, you see maybe now there's inclusion. But when you go to the rural areas, it's a bit contrary.
It's just to keep the conversation going on and just letting parents know there is nothing wrong of having a child with a disability. They are not a curse. Was I born out of curse? No. And I'm very proud to have a parent who has a disability. So when we stop thinking that a person with disability is either bewitched, the parent maybe was cursed, and mostly they blame the mothers. Because we will realize in most families where we have a child with disability, they don't have a father. Most of them are raised by mothers, and you'll realize this mother was either divorced, just away from the marital home, just because of having a child with a disability. And you see, when you start facing rejection from young, when you're young,
You grow up like that.
it translates actually to your adulthood. And you talk about urban areas, you get to realize like so many schools who have learners with disabilities, they are special schools. So when they finish school, what do? They decide sort of going back home where nobody wants me and rather come to the city whereby I'll meet with my friends. So you see a person maybe from Migori, from Kilifi, they all converge either to Mombasa town, to Nairobi. This is where they identify with each other. That is where you get to realize in the urban centers, person with disability, they might do something for themselves. And if they are lucky to go to school, yes, they will. But you'll see them mostly in the urban center. Now, Wanajituma actually, yes, they work. Because they belong in that community. They feel accepted. More than home where they are seen as aliens. And that is in the rural and places. Yeah.
Now, maybe speaking of that, we have people who have been hiding their children because they have this shame. Maybe call it shame. So they had their children, they don't want to put them to participate in the various activities in the society. Maybe, is it really hard to live with persons with disability?
No, it's
As
not.
a parent, as a guardian?
It's not hard.
Because if you love me, you love me the way I am. It might be challenging depending on the type of disability that a child has, because there are some types of disability whereby they need a caregiver. For example, if you have a multiple disability, yes, so it's just a matter of the parent understanding the needs and the term of this child. And also we have got support systems, we have got organizations. Just be on the lookout to check and see. Yes, and you can actually handle your child. If maybe your child is deaf, you'll need to get to learn a basic sign language. That way you've actually solved the issue with your child, because the barrier is communication. If you have a child who is visually impaired, this child could either be totally blind or low vision. If you get to understand what this child likes, you don't have to shout and tell the child, can you see this? But you describe that item, the child gets to understand and your life goes on. In case a child has a multiple disability, you get to see there's something that makes maybe my child aggravated or angry. And all these you get to learn through the support systems that are available. And I'm also happy to also inform you that, like in the Ministry of Education, we have got something we call EAC, Education Assessment Research Centers. This is whereby they actually get to assess your child and tell you the level or degree of disability that your child has and the need and care that the child is exactly. So you see, when you get that information, it won't exactly.
You have talked about support systems. We have parents over there, we have persons with disability at home who don't know what to do, how to receive support. Maybe what can they do?
Okay, actually, even in our villages or anywhere, the first thing that we have an organization called the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Once you identify, and they're actually in all the counties, so when you go to that county and get to ask, because they're the custodians of all organizations of persons with disability, for and of. That means those who have been formed by persons with disability themselves, and those may be formed by parents or champions, and they cater for their needs. So when you visit such offices, you'll actually get to get a name of any support system that is around your vicinity. Yes.
Of course, when you want to join the NCPW, that is the National Council for Persons with Disability, you have to register, right?
Yes.
We still have been hearing complaints across the various communities in the country the registration process is a bit tedious. Have you faced that situation as well?
I've seen it. And I think at the current situation, it's a bit tedious because of the transitioning from the old generation cards to the new cards that have a QR code whereby you'll be easily identified as a person with disability. So I think, yes, indeed, there have been complaints that people are not getting their cards. But I think also looking on the other side, maybe the side of the council, we can also maybe give them a leeway because the first generation cards were printed out in December. And mind you, before then, there have been other applications that were underway. So I think those applications actually had to be halted to cater for the new generation. Plus now those who their registration actually had already expired, and now the new registration that is coming up. Yes.
You are a sign language interpreter, right?
Yes, I am.
Deaf people in our community. How accessible is sign language interpretation?
Sign language interpretation.
Of course, in the process of promoting inclusion, we need organizations in the country to promote this particular initiative by having interpreters, because the organization need to share information. How can they access interpreters as well?
Okay. You've given me 2 questions in one. I'll start by answering on accessibility of sign language interpretation services. First of all, we say there's a milestone we've made.
Yeah.
Apart from the milestone, we still need to do more because many are times where a deaf person may enter into a public institution for services and they result not to get an interpreter, which is very not actually what we envision. But for those maybe who can afford interpreters, they are lucky to go with them, and some organizations which are actually aware. But I advise deaf persons, you have a right to access any information that you need. So when you get somewhere and you don't get a sign language interpreter, it's your right to voice and demand for one. And where to get an interpreter? First of all, I'll congratulate Science TV. There's an initiative that it has on Assist All. This is one platform whereby you can actually get interpreters, and even for interpreters who can actually get to find a deaf person who might be needing their services. We also have Association for Sign Language Interpreters in Kenya. So with that association as well, you can outsource interpreters, and even the National Council itself. Yes.
Okay, maybe now as we wind up, we still have people watching and they still want to know. Did you learn sign language ama your parents or someone know up to date?
As I started actually the conversation, many people think I learned sign language because I was taught at home. I was a chick. I have been very actually advocating since I was a kid. So I started signing when I was around 12 years old, but not to my own parents, no. I used to sneak out to their friends. I would go to weddings and do interpretation, but my interpretation was the basic signs called finger spelling. I would finger spell the whole ceremony, and the deaf persons who were there would tell me, just go on, just go on. But I became very serious after high school. I just decided I'm going to school. My mom didn't support me, but I decided to use her name. Mischievously, I just went to school and I told the person doing the training, Mom said she's going to pay, kindly teach me. So along the way, Mom is like, why am I being asked to pay? And trust me, doing my advanced level in interpretation, she didn't pay a dime. We actually talked to the trainers to train me for free. And then they give me work and I'll pay from the services that I do. And I thank God.
Do we still have a barrier of maybe, you've talked about finger what?
Finger spelling.
Finger spelling.
Yes.
Do we still have a barrier of now that particular basic sign language compared to now KSL, Kenyan Sign Language?
Kenyan Sign Language actually it has a structure on its own, and to me that was a very difficult thing I did in school.
So it's a barrier.
Yes. To me, I used to know sign language, and when I went to school, I was like, this is an easy thing. Let it come to a point where being taught how to change sign language to English. It's a total different structure. I may speak English in it, but the structure, the grammar, it's very different. And this is where I actually get to gauge the competency of this sign language interpreter passing communication to the deaf person. Yes.
So for people who are watching, they're supposed to go to school actually.
Yes.
To learn now the professional sign language.
Yes.
And leave alone the finger
The finger spelling.
finger spelling sign language. Maybe your final remarks now to people who are watching.
Okay. I would just love to say I'm proud being born and raised in a family whereby parents have disabilities, and that community raised me up. The way I see myself, I'm beautiful, I have knowledge. So educate your own child who has a disability. Don't disregard this child. We have got lawyers, doctors, all professions who have disabilities. So when you educate your own child, actually, they'll get to be transformers and leaders of today and tomorrow.
So it's about starting early in advance. Start
Yes.
with children.
Yes.
Make a basis. All right. Thank you so much for coming in. It has been a good initiative discussing with you. I'm sure people have learned a lot. I myself, I didn't know about finger spelling, but I know it was a basic form of sign language. Thank you so much. And all right, now we have come to the end of our discussion tonight. Hope you have learned a lot from our guest, Nkaziri Eid, who is from the Children's of Deaf Adults in Kenya. Thank you so much. Without further ado, we have come to the end.